The morning sun blazed across the Al-Suwaidi mansion on Palm Jumeirah, its rays catching crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's homes. From the outside, the 35,000-square-foot villa looked like an Arabian fairy tale. Inside, it had become a beautiful prison. Dana Al-Suwaidi stood at her bedroom window, watching her husband Ayaan play with their children in the manicured garden below. At 36, she remained Dubai's golden daughter, heir to a shipping empire, Instagram celebrity with 2.3 million followers, the woman who had everything money could buy, everything except her husband's love. But this story didn't begin with cold indifference. It began with obsession so intense it burned everything in its path. 8 years ago, Dana had been Dubai's most eligible heiress, a woman who collected experiences like precious gems. Her father, Mohammed Al-Suwaidi, had built an empire from nothing, rising from a small dhow operator to commanding container ships that bore his name across 3 continents. As his only child, Dana had inherited not just his wealth, but his ruthless determination to acquire what she desired. What she desired, with an intensity that surprised even her, was Ayaan sci-fi. The first time she saw him, Dana was attending a quarterly board meeting purely out of boredom. While executives droned through shipping reports, her attention was captured by a junior logistics coordinator who dared to challenge a senior manager's inefficient route proposal. Ayaan stood calmly as the boardroom erupted in argument, his quiet confidence cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. When Mohammed demanded his reasoning, Ayaan walked to the presentation screen with steady steps. His explanation was brilliant, a reorganization of Middle Eastern shipping routes that would save millions in fuel costs while reducing delivery times by 30%. Dana watched her father's expression shift from skepticism to genuine impressed surprise. In that moment, seeing Ayaan command respect through pure competence, Dana felt something she'd never experienced with Dubai's entitled elite sons. Genuine attraction. Ayaan sci-fi was everything the men in her social circle weren't. Born in Mumbai to a middle-class family, his father a respected teacher, his mother a bank clerk, he'd arrived in Dubai 8 years prior with nothing but a business degree from Delhi University and unshakable determination. While other expatriates spent their earnings on luxury apartments and weekend trips to Beirut, Ayaan lived in a modest studio in Dera, saved every dirham, and focused obsessively on advancing his career. He possessed something Dana had never encountered among Dubai's wealthy elite: genuine hunger for success that wasn't handed down through family connections. The pursuit began immediately and with characteristic intensity. Dana started finding excuses to visit the logistics department, asking pointed questions about shipping manifests she didn't understand. She orchestrated coincidental encounters at the company cafeteria, where her presence caused whispered speculation among lower-level employees and used to attention from the boss's daughter. For a woman accustomed to men throwing themselves at her feet for access to her father's money, Ayaan's polite but distant professionalism only intensified her obsession. He treated her with respect but maintained careful boundaries, never crossing the invisible line between employee and employer's family. Dana interpreted his restraint as a challenge. The courtship that followed was a masterclass in overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Private yacht dinners in international waters where Dana could display her wealth without seeming vulgar. Weekend shopping trips to London where she casually bought him watches worth more than his annual salary. Front row seats at Monaco Grand Prix races where celebrities competed for her attention while she focused entirely on the quiet man beside her. For Ayaan, these experiences existed beyond his wildest imagination. He'd spent years being invisible in Dubai's rigid social hierarchy, where nationality and family connections mattered more than individual merit. Being desired by the most powerful woman in the city felt like validation of everything he'd sacrificed to build his career. But Mohammed Al-Suwaidi watched his daughter's campaign with growing unease. He'd built his empire by understanding people's motivations, and he recognized something dangerous in Dana's fixation. During a private meeting in his office overlooking Dubai Creek, Mohammed delivered a warning that would prove prophetic. "She's infatuated, not in love. My daughter has always gotten what she wants, and right now she wants you. But Dana doesn't understand the difference between wanting something and keeping it. Think very carefully about what you're getting yourself into." The warning went unheeded. Ayaan was drowning in experiences he'd never dreamed possible, and Dana's attention felt like sunlight after years in shadow. Their wedding was Dubai's social event of the decade. 800 guests at the Emirates Palace, with entertainment flown in from 5 countries and coverage in 3 international magazines. Dana wore a custom Elie Saab gown that cost $200,000, while Ayaan stood beside her in Seville row tailoring that transformed him into a vision of success. The ceremony looked like a fairy tale brought to life. For the first 2 years, the marriage seemed like an impossible dream realized. Dana reveled in her role as the perfect society wife, hosting dinner parties where she could display her handsome husband like a prized acquisition. Ayaan adapted to his new life with remarkable grace. Designer suits replaced his modest wardrobe, a Bentley Continental GT appeared in their driveway, and memberships to Dubai's most exclusive clubs opened doors he'd never imagined existed. When Zara was born, followed 2 years later by Omar, Dana appeared to have achieved the perfect life her privileged upbringing had promised. Family photos showed a golden couple with beautiful children, surrounded by luxury most people could only dream of achieving. But perfection, like the gold that decorated their mansion, was merely a beautiful surface covering something far more complex underneath. Dana's love had always carried the seeds of possession. Marriage and motherhood transformed her affection into something darker and more controlling. She began monitoring Ayaan's schedule obsessively, growing jealous of his work friendships and expecting him to be available for her social engagements, regardless of his professional commitments. At dinner parties, she would interrupt his conversations to redirect attention back to herself. When he offered business insights to their guests, she'd dismiss them with patronizing laughter. When colleagues visited their home, she'd regale them with charming stories about Ayaan's middle-class background, turning his achievements into amusing anecdotes about her charity in marrying beneath her station. The emasculation was subtle but relentless. When Ayaan attempted to discipline their children, Dana would overrule him publicly. When he suggested family activities, she'd already made plans without consulting him. When he expressed professional ambitions, she'd remind him that everything he had came through her family's generosity. Slowly, methodically, Dana transformed her ambitious husband from a respected professional into a gilded pet. The change in Ayaan was gradual but unmistakable. The gratitude that had once shone in his eyes faded, replaced by something that looked dangerously like resentment. He grew distant during family dinners, distracted during social events. His responses became mechanical, his smiles forced. The man who had once hung on her every word now seemed to barely tolerate her presence. Dana noticed everything. She was too controlling not to. The way he checked his phone constantly, the mysterious business trips that seemed to multiply, the late nights at the office that hadn't existed before. Most tellingly, he'd stopped fighting her controlling behavior, not because he'd accepted it, but because he'd given up caring enough to resist. Their mansion felt different now. The marble floors seemed colder. The crystal chandeliers cast sharper shadows. Even their children sensed the growing tension. 7-year-old Zara asking why Daddy looked sad. 5-year-old Omar clinging to Ayaan whenever he prepared for business trips. Muhammad's warning echoed in Dana's mind with increasing frequency. She'd gotten what she wanted, but keeping it was proving impossible. Every day, she felt Ayaan slipping further away, his spirit retreating to places her money couldn't reach, his heart closing to her in ways that no amount of wealth could force open. The golden cage that had once seemed like paradise was becoming a prison for both of them. And Dana Al-Suwaidi, who had never been denied anything in her privileged life, was about to discover that some things, like human hearts, couldn't be controlled through wealth and willpower alone. The perfect marriage was developing cracks that no amount of gold could repair. Soon, those cracks would shatter everything beautiful they'd once shared, leaving only tragedy in their wake. Anna Brooks arrived at Al-Suwaidi Shipping on a scorching Tuesday morning in September, her blonde hair catching the fluorescent lights of the logistics department like spun gold. At 27, she carried herself with the confident stride of someone who'd conquered Los Angeles advertising agencies before seeking bigger adventures in Dubai's booming business landscape. Ayaan noticed her immediately. Not just her beauty. Dubai was full of stunning expatriate women, but the way she moved through the office with purpose, studying shipping manifests with genuine interest rather than the glazed confusion most new hires displayed. When Mohammed al-Suwaidi introduced her as Ayaan's new assistant, she looked him directly in the eyes and said, "I'm here to learn everything. Don't go easy on me." It was the first time in years someone had spoken to Ayaan as an equal. Anna's background was everything Dana's wasn't. Raised in a middle-class family in Santa Monica, she'd worked her way through UCLA, spent 3 years at a prestigious advertising firm, then decided corporate America was too small for her ambitions. Dubai represented opportunity, tax-free income, international experience, and the chance to reinvent herself in a city that rewarded bold moves. Unlike the other expatriate women who treated Dubai like an extended vacation funded by their husbands' careers, Anna had come alone, determined to build something meaningful. She'd rented a modest apartment in Marina, avoided the party scene that consumed most Western expats, and focused entirely on understanding the complexities of international shipping. Within weeks, Ayaan found himself looking forward to Monday mornings for the first time in years. Anna asked intelligent questions about logistics routes, challenged inefficient procedures, and offered fresh perspectives on problems that had plagued the department for months. More importantly, she treated him like the competent professional he'd once been, not the decorative husband he'd become at home. Their working relationship evolved naturally. Coffee meetings to discuss shipping schedules stretched longer than necessary. Anna would stay late to help with quarterly reports, their conversations shifting from business to personal topics. She told him about her dreams of starting her own consulting firm. He found himself sharing ambitions he'd buried under years of Dana's control. The emotional connection was immediate and dangerous. With Anna, Ayaan rediscovered the man he'd been before marriage: decisive, confident, intellectually engaged. She laughed at his jokes without patronizing undertones, sought his opinions without predetermined answers, and made him feel like his thoughts mattered. Dana noticed the change immediately. Her obsessive monitoring of Ayaan's behavior had trained her to detect the smallest shifts in his routine. He was staying later at the office, claiming urgent projects that seemed to multiply weekly. His phone, once carelessly left around their mansion, now stayed constantly by his side. Most tellingly, he'd begun pushing back against her social demands. "I can't leave work early for lunch with the wives," he'd said last Tuesday, his voice carrying an authority she hadn't heard in years. "We're implementing a new tracking system." Dana's suspicion transformed into surveillance. She began calling his office at random times, finding excuses to visit the shipping headquarters, interrogating their household staff about Ayaan's moods and behaviors. The manicurist who visited their home weekly reported that Ayaan seemed happier lately, more energetic. The driver mentioned he'd been asking for rides to downtown hotels for business meetings. The first secret meeting happened at the address downtown hotel. Anna had suggested lunch to discuss a complex shipping contract with European clients. They'd chosen a quiet restaurant in the business district, far from the social circles where Dana's friends might spot them. What began as a professional discussion became something more intimate when Anna placed her hand over his while he explained the pressures of his marriage. "You deserve to be treated like the brilliant man you are," she'd said softly, "not like some accessory." That touch, that validation, ignited something in Ayaan that had been dormant for years. For the first time since his wedding, he felt truly seen by a woman who wanted nothing from him except his authentic self. The affair escalated quickly. Secret lunches became evening meetings. Hotel restaurants became private suites. Within 2 months, they were meeting 3 times a week, their relationship becoming the emotional center of Ayaan's existence. Anna gave him back his sense of masculinity, his professional confidence, his belief that he was worth more than Dana's golden cage. Office gossip was inevitable in the close-knit shipping company. Colleagues noticed how Anna's eyes lit up when Ayaan entered meetings, how they lingered together over reports, how their business trips to Abu Dhabi and Sharjah seemed to require extensive private consultations. The rumor mill churned with whispered speculation about the logistics director and his beautiful American assistant. Dana's paranoia intensified. She began showing up unannounced at company events, her eyes scanning for threats she couldn't yet identify. During a company dinner at the Burj Al Arab, she watched Ayaan and Anna's professional interactions with laser focus, detecting an intimacy that made her blood run cold. The breaking point came when Anna suggested something that would have been unthinkable months earlier. What if we didn't have to hide anymore? What if we could start fresh somewhere new? Cyprus, she explained, offered opportunities for ambitious couples. They could marry there quietly, establish a consulting business, build the life they both deserved. Ayaan found himself seriously considering abandoning everything. His children, his position, his wife, for a woman who saw his true worth. The plan began taking shape with terrifying speed. Flight bookings, hotel reservations, research into Cypriot business regulations. Anna had made him believe in possibilities beyond his gilded prison. He had no idea Dana was about to discover everything. The discovery came on a Wednesday afternoon that started like any other. Dana sat across from her friend Layla at Café Bat Il in the Dubai Mall, half listening to gossip about mutual acquaintances while scrolling through Instagram. She'd arranged this coffee meeting partly for appearance's sake. Maintaining her social calendar was crucial to her image, and partly to escape the suffocating atmosphere of her mansion. Then she saw them. Across the glass atrium of the Address downtown hotel, visible through the cafe's floor-to-ceiling windows, Ayaan walked hand-in-hand with a blonde woman toward the private elevator bank. Even from a distance, their body language screamed intimacy. The woman, young, beautiful, obviously Western, leaned into him as they waited for the elevator. Ayaan's hand rested on the small of her back with casual possession. Dana's blood turned to ice. "Excuse me," she whispered to Layla, her voice barely audible. She stood on unsteady legs, her designer handbag falling forgotten to the floor. Through the window, she watched the elevator doors close, swallowing her husband and his mistress into the hotel's upper floors. The drive home was a blur of rage and disbelief. Dana's hands shook so violently she could barely grip the steering wheel of her white Maserati. Traffic crawled along Sheikh Zayed Road, each red light an eternity of torture as her mind raced through explanations. Business meeting, colleague, innocent encounter. But the hand-holding, the intimate body language, the way they'd moved together like longtime lovers. There was no innocent explanation. She burst through the mansion's front doors like a woman possessed, ignoring the startled greeting from Lena, their longtime housemaid. Ayaan's study was her first target. For 8 years, she'd respected his private workspace, but respect was a luxury she could no longer afford. The study looked innocent at first glance: mahogany desk, leather-bound books, family photos strategically placed for video calls. But Dana tore through it like a detective on a deadline. She dumped drawers, rifled through filing cabinets, pulled books from shelves. Nothing in the obvious places. Then she found the locked desk drawer. A letter opener made quick work of the flimsy lock. Inside, her worst fears materialized into damning evidence. A second iPhone she'd never seen before, still warm from recent use. Hotel receipts from the Address downtown spanning 3 months. Restaurant bills for 2 at intimate venues she'd never visited with him. Credit card statements showing charges she'd never authorized. Her hands trembling, Dana powered on the hidden phone. No password protection, Ayaan's first critical mistake. The screen filled with messages between A and someone named Anna Brooks. Hundreds of texts revealing an emotional intimacy that made Dana's marriage look like a business arrangement. "Can't wait to start our real life together," read one message from Anna, timestamped just 2 hours earlier. "Cyprus next month. Just you and me, finally free," Ayaan had replied. Cyprus. Dana's vision blurred as she scrolled through flight confirmations, hotel bookings, even research into wedding venues. Her husband wasn't just having an affair. He was planning to abandon their family entirely. The psychological break happened instantly. Dana alternated between screaming rage and catatonic silence, her emotions swinging like a pendulum between fury and devastation. She hurled the phone against the wall, watching it shatter into pieces, then immediately regretted destroying evidence. Lena found her an hour later, sitting in Ayaan's chair surrounded by scattered papers, mascara streaking down her cheeks like black tears. "Madam, what happened?" Lena asked, her voice gentle with concern. The words poured out of Dana in a torrent. Lena, who'd worked for the family since Zara's birth, listened with growing horror as Dana described the betrayal. When Dana finished, Lena's expression was grim. "I suspected something, madam," she admitted quietly. "Mr. Ayaan has been different. Happier when you're not home. He gets calls that make him smile in ways I haven't seen in years." The confirmation from someone she trusted hit Dana like a physical blow. Even the household staff had noticed what she'd been too proud to see clearly. That evening, Dana called her father. Mohammed Al-Suwaidi arrived within an hour, his face darkening as Dana presented the evidence. He examined the papers methodically, his businessman's mind cataloging each betrayal. "How long?" he asked finally. "Months, maybe longer." Dana's voice was hoarse from crying. "They're planning to leave together. To Cyprus. He was going to abandon us." Mohammed's silence was more terrifying than any explosion of anger. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the cold fury that had built shipping empires and destroyed competitors. "My daughter. This man has forgotten who he's dealing with. You gave him everything. Our name, our wealth, our family. And this is how he repays us." His eyes hardened. "We will not let this stand." The investigation that followed was thorough and devastating. Dana hired a private investigator who confirmed everything. The affair, the Cyprus plans, even Anna's apartment in Marina where they'd been meeting. Photos showed them holding hands at restaurants, embracing in hotel lobbies, shopping for engagement rings in the gold souk. As evidence mounted, Dana's shock transformed into something darker. The woman who'd given Ayaan everything, status, wealth, children, her father's blessing, had been betrayed for a nobody from Los Angeles. The humiliation was unbearable. Ayaan returned home each evening oblivious to the storm gathering around him. He played with the children, made small talk at dinner, even kissed Dana goodnight, all while planning his escape with another woman. The deception was complete, the betrayal total. Dana began planning her confrontation, unaware that her carefully controlled world was about to explode into violence that would shock even Dubai's scandal-hardened society. The morning of March 15th dawned with deceptive tranquility, but Dana Al-Suwaidi's heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for escape. She had rehearsed this moment through sleepless nights, her mind cycling between rage and devastation, between the urge to scream and the need to maintain perfect control. The private investigator's final report lay burned to ash in her fireplace, but every detail was seared into her memory. Cyprus flight at 2 p.m., Anna's pickup at noon, hotel reservations for their honeymoon escape. Dana descended the marble staircase at exactly 7 a.m., each step deliberate, calculated. Her silk Hermes robe flowed behind her like liquid gold, but beneath the luxurious fabric, her body trembled with barely contained fury. In the dining room, Ayaan sat with their children, 7-year-old Zara and 5-year-old Omar, cutting fruit into precise geometric pieces with the same methodical care he'd once reserved for her pleasure. The sight of him playing devoted father while planning to abandon them made bile rise in Dana's throat. His white linen shirt was perfectly pressed, his hair styled with expensive pomade, his wedding ring catching the morning light as he moved. Everything about him screamed success, sophistication, belonging. All gifts she'd bestowed upon a man who now planned to discard her like yesterday's fashion. "Good morning, darling," Dana purred, her voice honey-smooth as she kissed his cheek, the familiar scent of his cologne. Tom Ford Oud Wood, a birthday gift from her, made her stomach clench with betrayal. Ayaan's body went rigid at her touch, his muscles coiling like a snake preparing to strike or flee. Breakfast proceeded with surreal normalcy that felt like performance art. Dana chatted with the children about their school projects while Ayaan's fingers danced across his phone screen with increasing urgency. She watched his face transform as he typed, the subtle softening around his eyes, the ghost of a smile that never appeared when he looked at her anymore. Each message was another knife in her chest. Each secretive glance another confirmation that she'd lost him completely. The casual cruelty of his deception unfolded before their innocent children, who chattered about playmates and homework while their father orchestrated the destruction of their family. Dana felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack, hairline fractures spreading through her facade like stress patterns in crystal. At 9 a.m., Dana began systematically dismantling their household staff with carefully crafted lies. The gardener was dispatched to source rare orchids for the West Garden, a journey that would take hours. The cook received urgent family news requiring immediate departure. The driver was sent for extensive car maintenance. One by one, potential witnesses vanished until only Lena remained, loyal Lena, who'd witnessed too much to be safely dismissed. By 11 a.m., the mansion felt hollow, its vast spaces echoing with anticipation and dread. Ayaan had retreated to his study, supposedly preparing business documents for his fabricated Bahrain trip. Through the mahogany door, Dana could hear his voice transform into something she hadn't heard in years. Warm, tender, alive with genuine emotion. The sound shattered something fundamental inside her chest. This was the voice that had once whispered promises in the darkness, that had spoken their children's names with wonder, that had pledged eternal devotion before God and witnesses. Now it belonged to another woman, carried secrets Dana would never share, planned futures she would never see. At 11:45 a.m., destiny arrived in the form of a white BMW sedan. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Dana watched Anna Brooks emerge like a vision from her worst nightmares. The American woman wore a yellow sundress that made her skin glow golden in the Dubai sun. Young, effortless, radiating the kind of natural beauty that required no enhancement. Everything about Anna screamed freedom, possibility, the chance for reinvention that Dana's wealth and status could never provide. The sight of her husband's salvation walking confidently toward their front door triggered something primal and dangerous in Dana's chest. This woman, this nobody from Los Angeles, had stolen everything that mattered. Not just Ayaan's love, but his hope, his future, his very soul. Dana positioned herself in the marble foyer like a general choosing battlefield terrain. When Ayaan descended the stairs with designer luggage in hand, his face glowed with anticipation that died the moment he saw her waiting. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other across the space where their children had taken first steps, where family photos had been staged, where their marriage had slowly suffocated under the weight of too much control and too little genuine affection. The evidence scattered across the marble like accusatory confetti. Printed emails, flight confirmations, hotel reservations for their Cyprus escape. Each document was a bullet aimed at the heart of their family. Proof that Ayaan's betrayal ran deeper than simple adultery into the realm of complete abandonment. Anna Brooks, your assistant, your lover, your escape plan. Ayaan's shoulders sagged as 8 years of careful deception crumbled around him. Outside, Anna's first polite horn tap sounded like a death knell for their marriage, a cheerful signal that freedom waited just beyond the front door. The argument that followed felt like surgery without anesthesia, raw, brutal, necessary. Years of resentment exploded between them like a dam bursting under impossible pressure. Dana's accusations about abandonment met Ayaan's counterattacks about suffocation. Her fury at his ingratitude crashed against his desperate need for autonomy. Every wound they'd inflicted over 8 years of toxic love reopened and bled fresh poison into the space between them. Anna's horn grew more insistent, each honk adding pressure to an already explosive situation. The sound penetrated the mansion's perfect acoustics like artillery fire, reminding them both that escape waited mere steps away. Dana watched Ayaan's eyes flick toward the door with increasing desperation, saw the exact moment he made his choice. I have to go. Those 4 words triggered something fundamental and irreversible in Dana's brain. The casual dismissal, the emotional abandonment, the sight of him stepping around scattered evidence of his betrayal like it meant nothing. All of it crystallized into pure, murderous rage. Her hand found the ceremonial dagger in her father's antique collection without conscious thought. 12 inches of curved Omani steel, once used by pearl divers to defend against sharks, now became the instrument of her final act of possession. The violence erupted with shocking speed and brutality. 7 stab wounds delivered with the fury of a woman watching her entire world collapse. Ayaan's blood painted the marble foyer in abstract patterns of betrayal and revenge, his designer luggage scattering like broken dreams across the floor where their children played daily. When Dana finally stopped, her silk robe soaked crimson and the dagger dripping in her trembling hand. The mansion's perfect silence returned. Ayaan lay motionless beneath the crystal chandelier that had once symbolized their fairy tale life, his eyes staring sightlessly at a future he would never see. Outside, the car horn had fallen silent. Through the window, Dana could see Anna running toward the house, her yellow dress bright against the Palm Jumeirah landscape. A splash of sunshine approaching the scene of absolute darkness. The golden cage had finally claimed its victim, but in destroying what she couldn't keep, Dana had ensured that nothing beautiful would ever live within its gilded bars again. Anna Brooks burst through the mansion's front doors and froze. The marble foyer looked like a crime scene from a horror movie. Blood pooled around Ayaan's motionless body, seeping into the intricate patterns of Italian marble. The ceremonial dagger lay beside him, its ancient steel now stained with modern tragedy. Lena stood pressed against the kitchen doorway, her face pale with shock, hands trembling as she clutched her phone. In the center of the carnage, Dana sat on the bottom step of the grand staircase, her silk robe transformed into crimson evidence of her rage. Anna screamed, a sound that shattered the mansion's eerie silence. She dropped to her knees beside Ayaan, her yellow dress immediately soaking up his blood as she searched frantically for a pulse that would never return. "What have you done?" Anna sobbed, looking up at Dana with terror and disbelief. "He loved you. He never wanted to hurt the children." Dana stared at her with vacant eyes, as if seeing a stranger. "He was mine," she said quietly, her voice eerily calm. "He belonged to me." Within minutes, Dubai police swarmed the Palm Jumeirah villa. Anna had called emergency services, her hysterical testimony painting a clear picture of premeditated murder. Officers found Dana exactly where she'd been sitting, motionless, blood-soaked, staring at her reflection in the foyer's mirrored wall. The arrest was surreal. Dana offered no resistance as they handcuffed her designer-clad wrists. She walked past Ayaan's body without a glance, her movement robotic, disconnected from reality. The woman who'd controlled every aspect of her perfect life had finally lost all control. News of the murder exploded across Dubai's media landscape within hours. Shipping heiress kills husband in Palm Jumeirah mansion dominated headlines across 3 continents. The story had everything: wealth, betrayal, passion, violence, serving as proof that even paradise could harbor deadly secrets. Mohammed al-Suwaidi's empire trembled. Stock prices plummeted as investors questioned the family's stability. Business partners distanced themselves from the scandal. The shipping magnate who'd conquered trade routes across 3 continents found himself fighting for his company's survival while his daughter faced murder charges. The children became casualties of their parents' toxic marriage. 7-year-old Zara and 5-year-old Omar were rushed to their grandfather's compound, shielded from media frenzy by round-the-clock security. Child psychologists worked desperately to explain why mommy had hurt daddy, why their perfect world had shattered in a single morning of violence. Anna's testimony proved devastating during the trial. She described not just the affair, but Ayaan's emotional state, his feelings of entrapment, his desperation for freedom, his genuine love for his children despite planning to leave them. Her words painted Dana as a possessive controller who'd driven her husband to seek escape at any cost. He never wanted to hurt his family, Anna testified, tears streaming down her face. He just wanted to breathe again. The trial became Dubai's most watched legal proceeding in decades. Dana's defense team argued temporary insanity, claiming years of emotional pressure had caused a psychotic break. Prosecutors countered with evidence of premeditation. The dismissed staff, the confrontation setup, the calculated violence. Psychiatric evaluations revealed a woman whose identity had been so intertwined with control that losing it triggered complete psychological collapse. Dana showed no remorse, no understanding of her actions' gravity. In her mind, she'd simply protected what belonged to her. The verdict shocked no one. Guilty of first-degree murder. 30 years in Dubai's women's prison, with possibility of parole after 20. Mohammed al-Suwaidi aged a decade during sentencing, watching his empire's heir disappear behind prison walls. Anna returned to Los Angeles within weeks, unable to bear Dubai's memories. She left behind the life she'd planned with Ayaan, carrying only guilt and trauma from witnessing love's transformation into deadly obsession. The Al-Suwaidi mansion on Palm Jumeirah was sold quietly, its blood-stained marble replaced but its reputation forever tainted. New owners never learned about the violence that had occurred in their marble foyer, but locals whispered about the house where jealousy had turned paradise into hell. Dubai's elite society absorbed the scandal's lessons slowly. Beneath the city's glittering surface, the murder exposed uncomfortable truths about arranged marriages, social expectations, and the dangerous consequences of treating love as ownership. The golden cage that had once seemed like paradise had ultimately become a tomb for everyone trapped inside it. Dana Al-Suwaidi had learned too late that some things, like human hearts, could never truly be possessed, no matter how much wealth and power were used to build the prison. In the end, her desperate attempt to keep what was hers had destroyed everything she'd ever claimed to love.